Hello A&P1 students, this is Gina with a recording of a presentation for your second muscle lab. In the second muscle lab, we're going to cover muscles that are located in the shoulder and the upper limb. In your lab manual, these muscles are listed on page 174 and page 175. So first we'll start with muscles that act on the shoulder, and muscle 13 is the deltoid, and it can be seen it can be seen anteriorly. The pectoralis major is another one that can be seen anteriorly, and there are two that are visible posteriorly only, and that's the trapezius and the latissimus dorsi. Now you can also see part of the deltoid here because the deltoid is rather big and complicated. It has multiple bellies, and I'll show you an animation of that. So first we're going to look at a video of the deltoid. And I'm going to play it for you.
The deltoid is the large fleshy muscle we most associate with the shoulder complex. It may be separated into three groups of fibers: anterior, middle, and posterior. The origin of the anterior fibers is from the lateral one-third of the clavicle. The insertion is to the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The anterior fibers move the arm forward from anatomical position, thus flexing the arm at the shoulder. They also medially rotate the arm by turning the anterior surface of the arm toward midline. They are innervated by the axillary nerve. The origin of the middle fibers is from the acromion of the scapula. The insertion is to the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The middle fibers abduct the arm. They are innervated by the axillary nerve. The origin of the posterior fibers is from the inferior border of the spine of the scapula. The insertion is to the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The posterior fibers extend the arm at the shoulder. And laterally rotate the arm by turning the anterior surface of the arm away from midline. They are innervated by the axillary nerve.
And then I also have a video for the pectoralis major, and I'm going to play that for you as well.
The pectoralis major is the large superficial muscle of the arm located in the anterior thorax. It may be separated into two groups of fibers: superior or clavicular and inferior or sternocostal. The origin of the superior or clavicular fibers is from the anterior surface of the medial one-half of the clavicle. The insertion is to the lateral lip of the intertubercular groove of the humerus.
So for those two previous muscles, the deltoid muscle and the pectoralis major muscle, the actions that are listed are a little bit complex, as well as the origins and insertions, and my recommendation is to use what's in the table in your lab manual, because the origins and the insertions for sure are more concise, and the actions are too. So now let's look at those two posterior shoulder muscles, the trapezius, which I have a video for, and the latissimus I do as well. So just a sec here. Get it started.
The trapezius is the large trapezoid-shaped muscle located in the posterior thorax and neck. It may be separated into three groups of fibers: superior, middle, and inferior. The origins of the superior fibers are from the external occipital protuberance, the superior nuchal line, the ligamentum nuchae, and the spinous process of vertebrae C7. The insertions are to the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle and acromion of the scapula. With the origin fixed, the superior fibers elevate the scapula, gliding it toward the skull. The superior fibers also laterally rotate the scapula upward. With the insertion fixed and the muscle contracting on one side only, the superior fibers laterally flex and rotate the head and neck to the opposite side. With the insertion fixed and the muscle contracting on both sides, the superior fibers extend the neck. The superior fibers are innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. The origins of the middle fibers are from the spinous processes of vertebrae T1 through T5. The insertions are to the medial border of the acromion and the superior lip of spine of the scapula. With the origin fixed, the middle fibers adduct the scapula. This is a gliding movement toward midline. The middle fibers are innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. The origins of the inferior fibers are from the spinous processes of vertebrae T6 through T12. The insertion is to the tubercle of the spine of the scapula. With the origin fixed, the inferior fibers depress the scapula, gliding it inferiorly. The inferior fibers also laterally rotate the scapula upward. The inferior fibers are innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. The trapezius is the large trapezoid-shaped muscle located in the posterior thorax and neck. It may be separated in The latissimus dorsi is the large triangular-shaped muscle of the upper limb, which has an extensive origin from the posterior thorax and abdomen. The origins of the latissimus dorsi are from the posterior lip of the iliac crest, the spinous processes of vertebrae L5 through T7, and ribs 8 through 12 via the thoracolumbar fascia. The insertion is to the intertubercular groove of the humerus. Latissimus dorsi extends the arm at the shoulder. From a state of flexion, it moves the arm to an anatomical position or to a state of extension, and beyond this to a state of hyperextension. It also adducts the arm by moving it in a medial direction toward the midsagittal plane, and medially rotates the arm by turning the anterior surface of the arm toward midline. Latissimus dorsi is innervated by the thoracodorsal nerve.
Okay, the next group of muscles are called the rotator cuff muscles, and for these you just need to know actions, not origins or insertions. And you just need to be able to list them and their actions. So these include the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, the teres minor, and the subscapularis. So they're named according to their position related to the spine of the scapula. So the supraspinatus, of course, is located, I don't know why it's not working here, is located above the spine. The infraspinatus is located below the spine of the scapula. And the subscapularis, I have a picture over here from a video. It's in the subscapular fossa, so that means it's beneath the scapula, but really what that means is it's anterior facing, because they're assuming that you're facing from the posterior side when they name it subscapularis. And the teres minor is also a rotator cuff muscle because it will help rotate the humerus. That's what a rotator cuff is. Oh, the actions of each one of these. Okay, so the supraspinatus, it abducts. Why is it not working? Hold on.
Versi is the large triangular-shaped muscle of the upper.
Okay, we'll try again. Sorry. So the supraspinatus abducts, abducts the humerus. The infraspinatus laterally rotates. The teres minor laterally rotates. And the subscapularis medially rotates. So to remember these, I usually remember S, I, T, S, sits, and then all M. So the reason these are called rotator cuff muscles, of course, is because of the rotation that three of them do. But also they're important for stabilizing the humerus in the glenoid fossa. Okay, now we're going to look at muscles that actually act on the forearm. They're located in the upper arm for the majority of them are, not all of them, but they act on the forearm. So they're going to act below the elbow, the level of the elbow. So there are three flexors of the forearm. Muscle 21, which is the biceps brachii, that's the big one anteriorly that we often think of. But beneath it is the brachialis, that's number 22. And to tell you the truth, the brachialis is the prime mover of forearm flexion. It does most of the work. But they act synergistically, the biceps brachii and the brachialis. The brachioradialis also helps to flex the forearm, but it's located a little bit more inferiorly. It has an origin up on the humerus, and its insertion is lower on the radius. Now there's just one forearm extensor, and that's posteriorly, called the triceps brachii. And you can see that its insertion point is right on that olecranon process of the ulna. So we're going to look at these a little bit more individually. So this is a picture of all three and how they act to flex the forearm. Notice that the biceps brachii has an origin on the scapula up here. It actually has two bellies. We call this the long head, and one's a short head. It doesn't matter. But that's why it's named biceps, two heads. The brachialis is beneath that. Its origin is actually on the humerus, and it inserts on the ulna, whereas the biceps brachii inserts on the radius. The brachioradialis, you know the insertion by radialis, it's here, and it begins behind this brachialis on the humerus. So all three of those act to flex the forearm. So one way that I remember the origins and insertions is that the prime movers for both flexors and extensors are going to insert on the ulna. Always on the ulna. The triceps for extension inserts on the ulna, and the brachialis for flexion inserts on the radius. On the ulna, sorry. And then muscles that act synergistically with the prime mover Of course, there aren't any for extension, but there are two for flexion, and that would be the biceps brachii and the brachioradialis. They both insert on the radius. Okay, the last two muscles that we have for this week are the pronator teres and the supinator. They both originate on the humerus and the ulna, and they both insert on the radius. Both act on the forearm, and the hand will just sort of follow with the forearm, so they kind of act at the wrist too. But their fibers are going to run different directions, because one is going to pronate and the other is going to supinate. Those are opposing actions of the hand. So one is going to have fibers that runs this direction, another is going to have fibers that run that direction. And of course the fibers shorten when they contract. So we're going to look at the next slide and see if we can distinguish the difference. So up here is the humerus, and this is the ulna, and this is the radius. So we have one muscle that has originated over here on the humerus and inserts on the radius. If this muscle contracts, which it is right now contracted, the hand is facing up. So this has to be the supinator. A is the supinator. And notice that when it relaxes, I'm going to go over to the second picture, this one over here. When that muscle relaxes, you can see the full length of it, because it curls around the radius. As the radius flips over, the muscle kind of goes with it. But this is a relaxed supinator. And if we look at the other muscle associated, this is going to obviously be the pronation, pronator teres. We have an origin on the humerus and the insertion on the radius. And when this muscle is relaxed, it's long. But then as soon as it contracts, it flips the radius over. And so now this is the pronator, because the hand is pronated. This is the pronator contracted. So those are all the muscles for this week. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.